this go because you know what I came here to do.
I don't get paid for overtime. I'm here to fight.
Now, the way that Fox Sports wrote it up in the information in the description box is that Tszyu was defending his WBO 154-pound title for the first time. But let's bear in mind he was an interim champion. Interim champion is not full champion. He was elevated to champion today. So this is not a first defense. This is his first fight as champion. And they shouldn't give misinformation like that. They shouldn't. Now, I predicted Tszyu to win the fight, likely on points, but I thought it'd be more competitive than that. Not that Brian Mendoza ever stopped trying. He never gave up. Showed a good chin, was badly busted up around the right eye, had what looked like a bad cut over the left eye by the end of the fight, and let's say from around the halfway mark, he lost his way and the fight was out of his reach. I think Brian Mendoza underestimated how important the first 3 rounds are. And while he boxed very well behind his jab at times, he didn't really make the impression on Tszyu that he wanted to make. The rounds were competitive. I would say Tszyu won the first one. Second one was hard to score, and I would have given Mendoza the third. He needed to silence the crowd. He needed to take some of the confidence away from Tszyu, from walking him down. But once Tim got in his stride, he was always going to be hard to peg back. The copy of the fight I had didn't have no 4th round, but by the 5th, Tszyu is walking Mendoza down, and Mendoza is busted up around the eye, and Tim is just teeing off power shots, and he's feeding off that hometown crowd energy. Brian came 2 weeks in advance so he could climatize properly, and he's going to watch this back, and he's going to be disappointed because even though, in my opinion, by the 5th, he's letting it go. The rounds are competitive. They're competitive rounds. Tim's having to work for his openings. And Brian is boxing very well, but he's looking to counter maybe just a little too much. Tim, he's really trying to walk Mendoza down in the 6th, but Mendoza, good movement. Don't ignore the body punches. It may look like he is not doing enough to win the round, but he did counter well enough and use the jab well enough to nick the 6th. Issue I have, he's not making an impression in the fight. Nicking rounds might not be enough to win the war. They were saying Tim didn't use the jab enough, but I think he used it as much as you would expect in a Tszyu scrap. Tim's looking for the power shots. We're in the 7th round. Keeps his guard high, and it's a very good high guard. Brian took some vicious uppercuts. There was a couple of right uppercuts that got in there, and Tim was dominating the round, but Brian showed a great chin, and he dug back to the body when he looked like the ship was sinking. But it was a dominant round, and the fight has turned. It has turned. In the 8th, Mendoza is given as good as he gets, but he's being pushed back way too much, and he's away from home. By the 9th, Mendoza knows he's in with the better fighter. It has to be said. Tim has coped well with the counters all throughout. He's picked a lot off on the forearms, and he's rolled a few of the shots, took a few of them flush. But now, Brian is just fighting to stay in the fight, really, not to get stopped. And Tim is dominating with the jab, despite him saying he wasn't throwing it enough. He's dominating with that. That right hand is landing, and he looks comfortable in there. Really good performance. And Tim is underrated. He's definitely underrated. 10th round was a bad one for Mendoza. Took a real beating, in between the beating, he did land a body shot, and Tim tried to laugh it off and maybe pass it off as a low blow. But he took a real beating, Mendoza. There was a massive right that had him in trouble, and there was uppercuts going in there, and Tim was looking for the stoppage. This was total domination. The fight is way out of Brian's reach now. Way out of his reach. 11th and 12th to go, championship rounds. If you haven't seen this fight, I've enjoyed this fight, man. Tim dominated the 11th, totally dominating it there. Telling Brian to get off the ropes, the commentary team, but that's the only place that will accommodate the house in right now is the ropes. It's just pressure. And Tim's looking for the stoppage. Make no mistake about that. Brian lands uppercuts, some left hooks, but they just bounce off Tim like he's made of iron, like he's indestructible. This is the first time Brian has been in the 11th round, I believe. And he's being made to pay. He's taking a beating now. I picked Tim because I figured he'd be too tenacious, and that's how it turned out. The commentary team did a good job. I listened to the commentary on this one. I don't usually. And very good round. Very good round. Excellent fight right now. I thought with the crowd roaring him on, he would have went for the grandstand finish, Tim, but no, he smartly played the 12th safe, protected what he built, and Mendoza took the last round. Tim gave him the round. Tim counted off the ropes, and Mendoza scored a few jabs and combos, but nothing heavy. And Tim won well. He won well. He won well. Very good performance. If I was to nitpick, and when I say nitpick, that really is what it is. He didn't go to the body enough, and I think if he went to the body, he could have actually got the stoppage. But then again, Brian is very durable, and he'll come again. Brian is trained by Ismail Shalas, and he's supposed to be a great technical guru type, you know what I mean? Cuban, sexy boxing, all that, but they didn't come prepped at all for Tim's uppercut, did they? That right uppercut done too much damage. But right now, it's Tszyu, WBO 154-pound champion. In my opinion, the best 154-pounder. The Jermell Charlo fans won't want to hear that, but he hasn't done nothing for a long time, whether it's injury or not. And this is what they're failing to realize, whether it's him or his brother. Just because they're injured, and you can argue that being injured is out of their control, life goes on. The weight class carries on. In any other sport, if you're injured, football for instance, if you're injured and you deplete, weaken your team through your injury, they've still got to carry on and play. Tszyu is the top man. I mean, if Charlo drops back down to 154, we'd all love to see the fight. I mean, he's still got straps there. It'd be a great fight. He'd get the chance to re-establish his dominance. Australia doing pretty well. Doing pretty well. They've got 3 world champions. They've got Tszyu, they've got Jaya Pataya and Jason Maloney. 3 at one time. It's no mean feat. Terence Crawford next for Tszyu. It's a very good fight. Would Terence be prepared to travel over to Oz to get the opportunity? Or would Tim go to America? Vincenzo Gaultieri. Have an Italian name. But he was, he was based in Germany, born in Germany. 30 years of age. They say he's 5'10 and a half, but he looked a lot smaller than Janibek, who's registered as 5'11 and a half. Looked like a super middle against a welter. Now, Gaultieri was trying this hands down reflex thing. He got caught with a left to the body, just a little sharp left to the body almost immediately. And Janibek was dominating behind. When I say dominating, he was controlling the pace of the first round behind that southpaw lead. No disrespect to German boxing, but if the German has had all his fights in Germany, who did he really beat to get a world title shot? And who is Falcao, the guy he beat for the IBF belt? Who are these contenders? Vincenzo physically doesn't look like a middleweight. He doesn't look like he's in top shape to me. Janibek is looking for that left uppercut, looking to feint with the jab, make Vincenzo bite the feint and catch him with that uppercut. Janibek not out of first gear. He's won the first 2. Easy. So Gaultieri came out here to counterpunch Janibek, who has the longer arms and the quicker jab. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't get it. But, Janibek is looking quick. He's whipping that jab out there, looking for that left hook, come uppercut to the body of your head. Gaultieri swole up round the left eye from the jab. He's moving around the ring with his hands down, gesturing like he's going to do something. Dude, you need to get your hands up and walk into this guy and throw some punches. No disrespect. He looks like somebody who's been watching television and seeing a boxer do some flashy hands down counter punching, and he says, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym and try that. What the fuck are you doing? You're in there with this rangy middleweight, one of the top amateur middleweights, trying to box him by counter punching. What's going on?
Thought that Jermell Charlo was bad. My goodness, I don't lie. What is up with these champions not coming to fight?
What are you doing? What's going on with boxing these days? Now Janibek's just teeing off on him. In the 4th, Janibek played with him behind the jab. Sometimes he stepped in with it. Sometimes Janibek done his little Philly shell and then popped him with a jab and the odd left here. He's not out of first gear. And maybe me and Tim Bradley are being too hard on Gaultieri. He's just way out of his depth here. Like, you see, this is where the quality control is needed in boxing. How was he allowed to fight for a title? How? This guy wouldn't even go 5 rounds with Denzel Bentley. or Felix Cash, they'd all beat him. They'd all beat him. You line up our middleweights over here, they'd beat him. He hasn't won 10 seconds of a round throughout the fight, and we're in the 5th. He hasn't won 5 seconds of a round since the fight started. But by this stage, his eye looked a mess. He caught a 1-2, and now he doesn't know if he wants to bounce around with his hands down, trying to counter or come forward. And Janibek just continued to tenderize him behind the jab, not going full throttle. No need to. A left uppercut from Janibek, the punch he's been looking for all night, hurt Gaultieri. He rocked back into the ropes, and he bravely did try to come back with a left hook to give him some credit. But even that didn't land. Just been one-sided traffic all the way through. At the end of the round, Janibek pumping his fist in the sky. He knows he's got this. Round 6, Gaultieri finally opened up and threw a burst of punches at ALIMKHANULY, aka Janibek. Finally, this is what he needed to be doing from the start. And then, predictably, he went back into his shell, retreating and moving. Another left hand hurt him. He reeled back on the ropes. Janibek stalked him while Gaultieri was waiting on the ropes to get pounded again. And the referee just stopped it. He just waved it off because it was just one-sided. I'm still not convinced that Janibek is who a lot of his fan base at the time or the media was saying he was a few years back. I'm still not convinced. What, Denzel Bentley wouldn't have beat Gaultieri? What about Chris Eubank? He wouldn't beat Gaultieri? Felix Cash wouldn't beat Gaultieri? But yo, congrats, Janibek, the unified champion. But I'll say no more because it's going to look like, you know, I'm hating or I've got an agenda. So I'll say no more. Janibek has beat who they put in front of him. So Danny Dignam for the interim title. Then he was elevated when he fought Bentley. Stephen Butler was a defense. And now this guy here? What, is Johnny Boss back in town? The gravedigger digging up bodies for Janibek. Apart from Denzel, they've all been garbage. Somebody talked to Bob Arum about what's going on. With the Misfits, yeah, I did observe that John Fury was trying intimidation tactics. Somebody in the comment section said, nah, it's not intimidation tactics. He's trying to sell the show. The show was sold on the first day. The Manchester Arena was sold out first day. There's no show to sell out. Yeah? It's going to do huge pay-per-view buys. They don't have to sell no show. He was trying to intimidate KSI and try and shake him out of his game plan. Although, I mean, in all proof, he didn't really have a game plan. He ended up clinching a lot because after he threw that right hand and it missed, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to fight inside. And his footwork, apart from bouncing up and down and flapping his hands by the side of him, is non-existent. Hasn't got a clue how to fight inside. Tommy landed 12 jabs, they say, throughout the whole fight. And in all truth, you know, with that size advantage, if that's the best he could do, I don't see myself having a physique like Tommy's and someone KSI size being able to tie me up, take all my best punches. I just don't see it. Tommy's just big for nothing. People are saying, a lot of people saying KSI was tying up. Well, so was Tommy. Tommy tied up as much as KSI. You know, Tommy's all bound up and tight. He can't relax enough to throw a decent jab with them long levers he's got there. Big long arms. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't rate Tommy. Never have. He's a blown up bodybuilder who can't box.
Blown up bodybuilder who can't box. There's no way to talk about your brother Tyson. I mean, Tommy did his best. KSI can't cover himself in glory in no way, but the size advantage alone should have meant he didn't go the distance in this one. Let alone it be a razor thin decision going Tommy's way. Not a great advertisement for the Misfits, it has to be said. Fights like that. Or Dylan Dennis looking totally inept. But these influencers, they find a way to reinvent themselves and promote themselves. So anyone thinking the influencer Misfits circuit is over, it's not over yet. It's not over. And even if it is a bad advertisement for Misfits influencer boxing, the so-called quote-unquote real hardcore boxing fans shouldn't be rejoicing because they're not gaining ground. Even if the Misfits are misfiring. I mean, Tommy versus Jake Paul, that fight was crap as well. You know, I'm going to keep it real. The worst thing for the Misfits in influencer boxing was Tommy Fury. He's made it an absolute shit show living off his brother's name. And we know KSI can't fight unless he's taking on some randoms off the road who could talk their way into the arena to have a fight. We know he can't fight. So they're going to have to find a way to reinvent this Misfits thing. Let's see what they do next. And what they're saying is his closest fight to date. I haven't seen it. I saw a couple of highlights from ESPN. People are saying Tim Bradley was a little biased. Majority decision win over NAHIR Albright. 2 scores of 96-94, 97-93, and 195-95 tally in what was the co-feature to Janibek versus the other geezer. You know, they're talking about Floyd Schofield, Kewshawn Davis, Frank Martin. A lot of people are saying it would be wise that he doesn't step up yet. Needs to learn his craft a little more. They're talking about Andy Cruz, who beat him in the Olympics, who beat him several times in the amateurs, the Cuban, who's now signed to Matchroom. Albright, a Philadelphia fighter, they say he can handle himself in there. And according to the boxing scene report, fighters were warned for throwing each other and landing well after the bell in the opening round. A sequence initiated by Albright, to which Davis responded in an effort to defend himself at all times. Davis is now 10-0 with 6 inside the distance. Albright fell to 16-3 with 7 inside the distance. I think they better step Kewshawn up. I don't think decelerating him would do him any good. He's already stop and started turning pro, then going back amateur to the Olympics and going back pro. But at 24, it's time to, let's get it cracking, man. Let's see what he's made of. They're talking about Jose Pedraza in his next fight, although Pedraza hasn't won for a couple of fights, has he? He hasn't won in his last 3. Anyone watch the fight, the whole of it? Kewshawn slipping, or was he ever all that? Let me know.